Fortune Podcast, From Pain and Prison to Purpose, Episode 15. I am Fortune Reigns, and this is Fortune. Segment 1, Redefining Success on Your Own Terms. Before you can build the life you want, you have to be honest about whose definition of success you have been chasing. Because most of us inherited a definition we never examined. Success looks like a specific income level, a specific kind of house, a specific set of possessions, a specific social status that signals to the people around us that we have arrived. That definition has handed to us by culture, by media, by the neighborhoods we grew up in, by the comparisons we absorbed before we were old enough to question them. And for men who have been through incarceration, that inherited definition often carries an additional layer. The pressure to prove something, to demonstrate to the people who wrote you off, to the system that discarded you, to the family members who doubted you, that you are capable of achieving what the world told you was out of reach. That pressure is understandable, but it is also dangerous. Because when your definition of success is built around external validation, around proving something to someone else, it has no stable foundation. The moment the audience changes, or the goalposts move, or you achieve the thing you were chasing and discover it did not deliver what you expected, the entire structure becomes unstable. Success built on someone else's definition will always leave you feeling like it is not enough, because it was never designed for you. It was designed for whoever invented the definition. So you go back to the beginning and you ask the question that most people never ask directly. What does a good life actually look like for me? Not for the version of you trying to prove something, not for the audience watching you rebuild. For you, in your actual daily experience. What does it feel like to live well? What relationships are central to that life? What work gives you a sense of contribution and meaning? What kind of man do you want to be in the small, private, unwitnessed moments that no one applauds? Those answers are your real definition of success. And they are worth more than any externally constructed standard. When your definition is yours, your movement toward it is self-sustaining. You do not need external validation to confirm you are on the right path, because the path belongs to you. Here is your action step. Write your personal definition of success. Not what it looks like to others, what it feels like to you in your actual daily life. Use specific language. Name the relationships, the work, the standard of character, the contribution, the experience of being alive that you are building toward. Then read it back and ask, is this mine, or did I inherit it? If it is yours, build toward it without apology. If it is inherited, reverse it until it is. Because the life you build to someone else's standard will never be the life that actually satisfies you. Build toward your own. Segment 2. The relationship between health and everything else. Everything you are building depends on a foundation that most men in the rebuilding process treat as optional. Your health. Not as a lifestyle aspiration, as infrastructure. Because without physical and mental health operating at a functional level, nothing else you are building can sustain itself. The discipline fades, the clarity clouds, the emotional regulation you have been developing breaks down. The energy required to execute consistently is simply not there. And for men coming out of incarceration, the baseline health reality is often compromised before the rebuild even begins. The physical environment of incarceration is not designed to support well-being. The food, the stress, the sleep deprivation, the lack of adequate medical care, the chronic exposure to threat and tension, all of it leaves a residue that does not disappear the moment you walk out. Add to that the mental health dimension, the unprocessed trauma, the hypervigilance that kept you safe inside now fires at inappropriate moments outside. The depression and anxiety that are statistically overrepresented in men with incarceration histories and dramatically underrated in those same men. All of that is real, and ignoring it does not make it manageable. It makes it worse. The good news is that health, like everything else we have discussed across this series, is something you can build intentionally. It does not require expensive resources or elaborate systems. It requires consistent, basic practices applied daily. Movement. Your body was designed to move, and regular physical activity is one of the most well-documented interventions for both mental and physical health available at zero cost. Walk. Run. Do bodyweight exercises. Move every day in a way that elevates your heart rate and shifts your physical state. Sleep. The rebuilding process demands cognitive and emotional resources that are replenished only during sleep. Protecting your sleep is not a luxury. It is maintenance on the most important infrastructure you have. Nutrition. What you put in your body directly affects your cognitive function, your emotional regulation, and your energy levels. You do not need perfection. You need consistent, basic improvement on what you were doing before. Mental health support, therapy, counseling, peer support, structured reflection, whatever is accessible and effective for you. This is not weakness. This is the most serious men you know making the most important investment available to them. Here is your action step. Identify the one area of your health that is most directly affecting your ability to build. Sleep, movement, nutrition, mental health support, or something specific to your situation. Then make one concrete change in that area starting today. Not a complete overhaul, one change, consistent, sustained. Because you cannot build a life that holds on a foundation that is crumbling. Tend to the foundation. Segment 3. Navigating romantic relationships during the rebuild. Romantic relationships during the rebuilding process are one of the most significant variables in whether a man sustains his rebuild or regresses. And they are also one of the most consistently avoided topics in the spaces designed to support men in your position. The programs address employment and housing. The counselors address behavior and compliance. Almost no one addresses the intimate relationship dynamics that are quietly determining outcomes just as powerful as any official intervention. So, let us address them directly. If you are returning to a relationship that existed before your incarceration, you are not returning to the same relationship. Time changed both of you. She built a life in your absence, made decisions without you, carried weight that was supposed to be shared, developed a level of independence and self-sufficiency that may not naturally accommodate your re-entry. And you carry your own changes, your own growth, your own adjustments to an identity that was tested and reshaped by everything you went through. Two changed people trying to rebuild a shared life requires intentional communication, patience with the awkwardness of relearning each other, and the humility to acknowledge that your return is not automatically a restoration. It is a negotiation. If you are building a new relationship during the rebuild, the most important question to ask is whether the relationship is aligned with your direction or competing with it. A relationship that supports your growth, that challenges you toward your standard, that does not require you to compromise the identity you are building, that is a resource. A relationship that pulls energy from your direction, that is rooted in the old version of you, that creates dependency or drama or distraction, that is a liability. And the hardest truth about that assessment is that attraction and alignment are not the same thing. You can be powerfully drawn to someone who is completely incompatible with where you are going. The chemistry is real, the connection is real, but so is the cost. This is not a call for isolation or for treating relationships as purely transactional. It is a call for honesty about what you can sustain right now and what the relationships in your life are actually producing. If a relationship is making you better and your direction stronger, invest in it. If it is not, that requires an honest conversation with yourself before it requires a conversation with anyone else. Here is your action step. Assess the primary romantic relationship in your life right now, whether current or recently significant. Ask honestly, is this relationship moving in the same direction I am? Is it built on who I am becoming or who I was? Write the honest answer. Then identify one thing you can do this week to either strengthen the alignment or address the misalignment. Because the relationship you are in is either rebuilding your future or consuming it. Know which one it is. Segment 4. Operating with integrity when it costs you something. Integrity is easy when it costs you nothing. When telling the truth is convenient. When following through does not require sacrifice. When keeping your word aligned does not require sacrifice. When keeping your word aligns perfectly with what you wanted to do anyway. Integrity is not a discipline, it is a default. The real test of integrity is what you do when it costs you something. When telling the truth means losing an opportunity. When keeping your word requires more than you anticipated when you gave it. When doing the right thing means watching someone else benefit from the wrong thing without consequence. When your standard demands a response that the people around you do not understand or support. That is where integrity either holds or it does not. And for men who are rebuilding, integrity under pressure is not just a moral issue, it is a strategic one. Because the reputation you are building, the trust you are reestablishing, the self-respect you are developing through kept promises and consistent follow-through. All of it is constructed through the movements when it would have been easier and more immediately rewarding to compromise. Every time you hold your standard, when the cost is real, you make a deposit into the account of your character. That compounds over time into something no external credential can replicate. And every time you compromise in the moments that feel small, you make a withdrawal that is larger than it appears, because the damage of small compromises is not in the immediate consequence. It is in the internal narrative they create. Every compromise tells you something about who you are. And if the pattern of small compromises continues long enough, the narrative shifts from "I made a bad choice" to "this is who I am." That narrative is the most dangerous thing you can allow to take root. You interpret it by holding your standard in the moments that cost you. Not perfectly. You will make mistakes, but the commitment to return to your standard after every mistake, to acknowledge the compromise, correct the course, and recommit to the direction, that commitment is what integrity actually looks like in practice. It is not the absence of failure. It is the refusal to make peace with it. Here is your action step. Identify one situation in your current life where your integrity is being tested, where the easier choice and the right choice are not the same thing. Write down what operating with integrity in that situation looks like specifically, not in principle, in the next concrete action you take. Then take it, because your character is not built in the easy moments. It is built in the ones that cost you something. And those are the moments that define who you actually are. Segment 5. Setbacks are not sentences. You are going to have setbacks, not because you're doing something wrong, not because the direction you have chosen is the wrong one, not because the work is not working, or the decision was not real, or the transformation is not sustainable. Because setbacks are part of every process that is worth being in. The question is never whether a setback will come. The question is what you do with it when it arrives. And the most important thing to understand about a setback is what it is not. A setback is not a sentence. It is not a verdict on your potential or your direction or your capacity to build the life you have committed to building. It is not evidence that you were right to doubt yourself, or that the people who wrote you off were right about you. It is not a sign from the universe that you should stop. A setback is information delivered at a cost. It tells you something about what needs to be adjusted, what was not as solid as it needed to be, where the gap between your current capacity and the demand of the direction exists. That information is valuable, and the cost of receiving it, as painful as it is in the moment, is often lower than the cost of continuing without it. The men who rebuild most durably are not the men who avoided setbacks. They are the men who learned to process setbacks without letting them become stopping points. Processing a setback is not the same as dismissing it. You feel the impact. You acknowledge what was lost or damaged or delayed. You take honest account of what contributed to it, including your own choices where they were a factor. You grieve what needs to be grieved. And then you ask the only question that matters going forward. What do I do next? Not why did this happen? Not what does this mean about me? Not how do I explain this to everyone who is watching? What do I do next? That question returns your agency. It shifts your focus from the wound to the response. And the response is where your power lives. Now hear this. If you are in the middle of a setback right now and need direct support navigating the response and rebuilding your momentum, visit solomongraves.com. That's SOLOMANGRAVES.com. solomongraves.com to book a one-on-one session. You do not have to process this alone. Here is your action step. Identify one setback you are currently navigating or one you have not yet fully processed from the recent past. Name it clearly. Acknowledge what it cost. Then write down one action you can take within the next 24 hours that moves forward from it. Not past it, forward from it. Because a setback only becomes a sentence when you stop moving. Keep moving. Segment 6. The long view and the life you are earning. Every episode of this series has been about a specific dimension of the rebuild. The decision, the structure, the identity, the cycles, the trust, the transition, the systems, the money, the community, the mental health, the purpose, the discipline, the seasons, the anger, the mentorship, the forgiveness, the voice, the proof, the consistency, the narrative, the boundaries, the legacy, the learning, the doubt, the scaffolding, the loyalty, the integrity, the setbacks. All of it. Every segment, every action step, every framework and directive, an honest confrontation with what this process actually requires. All of it is pointing toward one thing, the life you are earning. Not the life you are waiting for, not the life that will arrive when conditions improve and systems become fair or people finally understand what you have been through. The life you are actively constructing through the quality of the decisions you make in the time you have. The long view is what separates men who sustain their transformation from men who experience it temporarily. because the long view holds you steady in the seasons when the short view offers nothing encouraging. When the daily work is producing results too small to feel significant, when the people around you are not yet registering the change, when the gap between where you are and where you are going feels larger than the ground you have covered. The long view says, I am building something that takes time to become visible. The work is not measured in days. It is measured in the accumulated direction of hundreds of days, each one a small but real movement toward the life I have chosen. That perspective is not passive. It is one of the most active and intentional stances available to you because it requires you to find meaning in the process rather than only in the destination. To value the daily practice of becoming rather than waiting for the arrival of having become. To treat each day not as a unit of time to get through, but as a unit of construction in the life you are building. And the life you are building is worth the time it takes to build it properly. Not quickly, properly. With integrity in the character, with depth in the relationships, with clarity in the purpose, with patience in the seasons that require it, and urgency in the moments that demand it. That is the life you are earning, and it is being built right now, in this decision, in this day, in the action step you are about to execute at the end of this episode. Here is your closing action step for episode 15. Write down where you intend to be 1 year from today. Be specific across the dimensions that matter most to you: character, relationships, income, contribution, health, purpose. Then identify the single most important daily practice that, sustained over the next year, will produce that result. Commit to it. Write it somewhere you will see it every day, because the long view becomes the life you live one day at a time. From pain and prison to purpose, keep moving. I am Fortune Reigns, and this has been Fortune.